Good afternoon, my name is Sharna and welcome to the first of hopefully many in TWW Talks, our newest podcast as part of our Tomorrow's Women online digital series, where we are providing free online activities, tutorials, hints and tips, all completely free of charge during our centre closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So who are Tomorrow's Women Wirral? We are a women's charity in Wirral working with women 18 plus and now young women aged between 14 and 17 in our newest project on Wirral to make positive lifestyle changes through targeted interventions, courses, activities and much more, all accessible completely free of charge. So today in this podcast, I am joined by Tomorrow's Women Empowerment Advisor and Tomorrow's Young Women Project Lead, Lauren, to talk all things RSE, Relationships and Sex Education for Sexual Health Week 2020. Lauren, say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Tomorrow's Women.
So hello, my name's Lauren. As Sharna said before, I am an empowerment advisor at Tomorrow's Women and the project lead on Tomorrow's Young Women. So ultimately it is to kind of encourage people, women, young women to kind of implement positive changes in their life, by targeted interventions, by virtual support at the minute. When the centre's open, it is face-to-face support. And just, encouraging them to be themselves in a more positive way.
Yeah, superb. Women supporting women here at Tomorrow's Women. So our newest project, Tomorrow's Young Women, is designed to be a guidance provision for young women aged 14 to 17 through, like we just said, activities, education, learning opportunities and peer support. A gender-specific provision that is often missed in that age group, wouldn't you agree?
Definitely.
At the moment, due to COVID, it's under a virtual launch where we offer advice to young women over the telephone, but the project does intend to be an in-person service, hopefully delivered weekday evenings in our community centre setting, supporting in areas such as relationships, sexual health, emotion management, substance misuse, mental health, and hopefully many other areas relevant to that age group as well. So, relationship and sex education has now been introduced as a mandatory education for young people in schools, which is obviously such great news. So, Lauren, what do you think about RSE in schools, and do you think it will be positive for young people to have this mandatory education?
Well, definitely be a massive positive for us to have it as mandatory, because if we think back to when we were in school, and to be fair, it wasn't that long ago really.
No.
Left probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And even then it was very military. It wasn't relaxed enough for you to feel comfortable to ask the questions that you need to ask.
Yeah. It's almost as though even now, I mean, obviously, like you say, it was, quite a few years ago we were in school, but we are still young in our 20s, I'd like to think. And I think sex and relationships and just generally anything a little bit more private and intimate is still somewhat seen as a taboo, and only to the detriment of young people, unfortunately. And so I think having this as a mandatory education is such a big move, and I know a lot of sexual health charities and young people's charities and organisations have been pushing for this for a long time, and I think it can only have a positive impact on young people.
Well, definitely, and them introducing it is going to be one of probably the best things to come of 2020, because obviously with the pandemic and everything's slowed down, but there's so much that we're going to be able to learn. Again, I keep referring back to when we were there, but there was no kind of guidance on manipulation towards it.
No.
People do it because they want to do it as well. There was no kind of
structure kind of thrown in. So like you'd be in year 10 and you'd be told the week before, right, next week you're going to have somebody from a sexual health clinic coming to talk about STIs.
Yeah.
And that'd be it.
And you'd get separated, so boys in one room, girls in another room, and then you'd still have the giddy ones, and it'd just kind of be an hour and that's it. Probably that's the whole...
Literally an hour of your whole kind of adult... Your secondary education, which is not... It's just unfortunate because it really is not the way to do it. And so hopefully having this mandatory education where it's implemented from primary age through secondary will have a positive impact. And I only think it can be positive in just talking about it, making it more of a conversation starter. Obviously, we know, especially in secondary, just across the board, different maturity levels and things, it's always going to be a little bit awkward or kind of a bit of a joke subject. But I think just the more you talk about it, the more natural it is. And so I think it's absolutely great.
Yeah.
So in respect of the relationships and sex education that's going to be provided, the government have decided that at primary age it will mainly focus on relationship education, so healthy relationships with family, with friends, and then better sex education then at secondary age with that kind of primary education already being implemented. So what do you think of that kind of distinction? Do you think that's the right way to do it? Do you think that we need better relationship education from a young age?
Definitely, because the relationships that we the relationships that we form when we're younger set a precedent for the relationships that we form later in life. So having the knowledge of what is healthy, what's not healthy, what's a more kind of, maybe not the word toxic because that's not really that much understood when you're younger, but knowing what kind of is bad for you,
good and bad,
is gonna help you towards forming those more intimate relationships as you do get older, and knowing what to look for, what's a red flag, even in friendships, because the amount of people that we say mix with the wrong crowd, but mix with people that don't support each other, or they're just not a compatible friendship, needs to be known.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And I think it is so appropriate for it to be primary age. This is going to be 4+. That's kind of the age that they're going to start at with the RSE education. And I mean, I know some people are hesitant, especially some parents, but I think when we know from kind of our work with Tomorrow's Women, the consequences of maybe not understanding relationships or not identifying harmful behaviours within a relationship, that does start from an early age, and unfortunately it can have consequences throughout your whole life, and even then on your kids' lives or your other family members. So it is going to be so important.
You know, there could be things going on at home, in youth clubs, in different things, and because it's not been discussed, it's not recognised as wrong, or it's not recognised as what is going on. So being able to introduce them can kind of help us protect our little ones as well.
Absolutely, 100%. So in respect of the relationship and sex education that's going to be implemented, there are obviously loads of topics that it will cover, I hope, but just some of the ones that I found. Digital safety and kind of online relationships.
Massive.
That's huge.
If you think now as well, how much is social media controlling us? Basically, in a way, we don't go anywhere without Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Snapchat's probably the main one at the minute, because, you know, you've got snap maps on and everything as well. You can just get randomly added and you can get to talking to people.
Yeah.
You don't know who's behind that. You can arrange to meet up with that person and it can be somebody completely different.
Yeah.
So that's massive in knowing your safety online as well.
Yeah. And in that respect, I suppose, just kind of based on what you said there, because that would be kind of catfishing, wouldn't it? But I suppose it's really important for teachers and those that are going to be providing this education, whether it be, you know, actually those within the schools or anybody coming in, it's that kind of terminology that they need to use, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's terminology that the kids know as well, or that they will then use going forward, because I think that's where often kind of this sort of education does fall flat, is that they don't use terminology that we would use as young people.
Or understand.
Or understand. And so you become detached from it then. It becomes an education that means nothing to you. You learn about it and that's it. It means nothing more or less than that. So with things like that, using terms like catfishing, using, you know, real life examples about like Tinder and Grindr and those, you know, all different kind of relationship or dating platforms, I suppose, as well. That's really important, isn't it? That they use terminology we know.
Definitely.
Also.
And it needs to be, especially with digital relationships, because you've heard stories all the time of, oh, she's just sent him a photo and he's posted it online, but that's actually illegal.
Yeah.
So it's knowing your safety online, and if that does happen to you, where can you go from there?
That's it, isn't it? If that happens, where can you go? That's the most important thing, because especially with things like that, you know, with kind of transferring images and things, young people do it.
Yeah.
And so it is important that if that gets into the wrong hands, or somebody uses that against you, or in a malice way, you know where you can go for support, because like you said, it is illegal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not widely known. And I think some soaps, for example, are starting to cover stories like that. I know there's recently been one in Coronation Street, actually, about a young person sending a photograph and it being then distributed round, and that is so important. Just it being something that is displayed in the household, you know, something that your family watches and then your parents know as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's just infiltrating it everywhere, really, isn't it?
And it's removing that stigma as well, because it's always the person that has done it, not the person that say we are talking about a photo, it's always the person that's taken the photo that gets the most of the consequences.
Absolutely.
Not the person that's kind of
distributed
done
it
what they
or
want with the photo.
Yeah.
It's always the shame on that person that's took it. But the more that we can talk about it, the more education that we can get around it, and the more that we know how to deal with it, the less stigma that there's going to be on people that are...
And I think there needs to just be a better level of understanding of what young people go through at that age in respect of sexual health and relationships. You're just starting to maybe explore your own body. You may be just starting to explore sexual activity, and again, even these kind of conversations in a school environment, from based on what we kind of went through in a Catholic school in particular, it is awkward. You wouldn't have this conversation with your teacher, but it's important that you can. And that's where this will hopefully come into play, is to open up that conversation and there be that level of understanding of this is what kids are doing, this is what young people are doing. So they're going to continue doing this, they're going to continue, you know, being sexually active or having these relationships or sending images, whatever it be. So you've got to have an understanding of it to be able to support. So another kind of area within the sexual and relationship education will be LGBTQ plus education, and I know that is critical. That is something that even up until when we were in school, there really was nothing. It was not really discussed. You know, there was such a taboo, for example, about being bisexual. It like you said, it was stigmatised hugely, and I think a lot of it came from a lack of understanding, because
massively.
It was not spoke about.
It wasn't.
You know, and I do hope that isn't the case anymore, and I certainly hope that with this level of education and it being a kind of more discussed topic, that will infiltrate that stigma a little bit more.
Massively, and you know, everybody wants everybody to feel included, so having that LGBTQ plus education in schools is going to be able to get everybody to understand, including teachers, including other pupils, including the person themselves that is having those doubts about the sexuality, or they're going through kind of an identity crisis. They don't know who they are, they don't know kind of where they fit in. So having that education is going to not only make them feel included, but it's going to give them more knowledge about who they actually are, and knowing that it's not classed as wrong, it's not kind of...
And that you fit somewhere, or even that you don't have to fit a category. You can
it's not fit, but it's okay.
You can just be you and that's fine. Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And I think even in respect to pronouns, now this is something that's... it's not new, but it is a fairly...
It's relatively...
it's a fairly new kind of concept, I suppose, in respect of the general public. And I know in recent training that we did with Brooke around gender identity, so this is Brooke Wirrell, we discussed pronouns and how not everybody will identify as either a he or a she.
Could be they.
It could be they, and it's about understanding how people identify as well. And again, it's being inclusive of that.
Definitely.
Using inclusive pronouns.
Misgendering somebody.
You know, for us, with our project and with the Tomorrow's Young Women project, we are gender specific. So we work with young women, but on a wider level. For other charities that maybe aren't gender specific, or just in general, it is so important, isn't it, to just try and get it right where possible. And it is, like you said, all about being inclusive. That's the main thing, isn't it? Great. So in respect of this RSE training, like we've just said, it can be a really awkward topic of conversation. You know, a sibling talking to a sibling, or a friend talking to a friend, or parent talking to the child. It's awkward enough, let alone in a quite structured, formal environment such as school, where it's education based, but like we just said, it is important that it infiltrates in this kind of academic and education environment. So do you think it will be difficult for teachers to implement this training and to start delivering when they may not have had a huge amount of training, little or none, to be honest? Do you think it's going to be difficult, and what do you think they can do to be more receptive, I suppose, and to just own it? I guess.
I mean, it's quite a difficult one because it really depends on that person's personality.
Yeah.
Because some people do tend to shy away when it comes to kind of sexual relationships and things like that, and intimacy and everything like that. But all they need to do is just listen. It's, do you know, everybody has questions, regardless who you are. If they're too embarrassed, be that person that they can come to and speak to in private, and just... You think back to when you were younger, the amount of questions that you had around it, and sometimes it was introduced too late.
Yeah.
You know, we had this kind of education that was too late for some people because they'd already...
Been there, done it, they were already sexually active.
It's just is that kind of listening ear and being approachable.
Even in respect of periods. You know, again, still, you know, the word period is some sort of kind of trigger word for some people, unfortunately. We were just discussing, you know, before we started recording about our education around periods in primary. Yeah. And I know for me it was year 5 and 6. So again, for those that started their periods at a younger age, too late at that point, you know. And it was a really quite a military operation when it came to discussing periods.
Because it was literally like, this is what happens, this is what you do, any questions? And if you had questions, I remember when we did it, it was kind of like a little post box and you wrote your questions down and you post them in the box and they read them out. So my question was, a general question, you know, hadn't started my period, wanted to know, you know, when you're on your period, do you bleed in the bath? Yeah. That's all I wanted to know. And it was laughed at, because it's not... Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was a genuine question.
I think it's almost, again, it's that lack of understanding of what the children or young people are thinking and feeling at that age. And I think when you're having those conversations, especially at primary level, no question should be seen as a stupid question. Yeah. Because especially if you haven't had your period yet, you genuinely don't know. Yeah. And to you, that's a big thing, you know, to see red in the bath. Would, like, if you didn't know, it would be a big thing or quite scary or whatever, you know. So it's, no question should be a stupid question when it comes to these topics.
And that's another thing that, you know, some teachers that might not be kind of had much training or feel comfortable enough to kind of deliver these sessions. No question's a stupid question, and nothing that you say is stupid either.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly that. And you don't always, as a teacher or an education provider, you don't always need to have the answers either. No. Sometimes if you don't know, you better say nothing.
That's okay.
That is okay. Yeah, you better say, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that question and I wouldn't want to misinform, so I'll find out. Happy days.
And I think as well, but some attitudes towards kind of sexuality are going to be massive. So when you're doing this sex education, it can't just be men and women. Yeah. It's got to kind of be...
Yeah, it can't be heteronormative.
Yeah, that's the word, heteronormative. Yeah. It can't be that way. It's got to kind of include all of it. And, you know, knowing the safety for each individual that's in there.
So I think this education not only will be informative for young people, but hopefully it will actually educate teachers of various different age groups. Yeah. On the topic too, that, you know, they might not understand, whether that be, you know, through, unfortunately, maybe a level of ignorance, or whether it be that generational gap, you know, because they haven't had the education. Hopefully it will be an educational tool for them too, and that's important. And I think where teachers can't provide kind of that targeted information, that's where the schools need to work really closely with charities and with specialist agencies. That's so great. And as Tomorrow's Young Women, we would be keen to you know, get into schools and deliver, particularly around healthy relationships.
Healthy relationships is massive.
You know, because we have the context around domestic abuse, you know, especially in an older kind of age group, you know, 18 plus with our Tomorrow's Women project. So, yeah, I mean, it is so important to have that collaborative approach as well, so that you're not misinformed, that you're given the right information that's from the right people, basically. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great.
I do.
I really do.
I really do.
I wish we were back in school now for this.
It's just so needed. That's the only thing that I can really say is just how massively important it is to get that into schools.
And I know that schools, I believe, have until the end of 2021 to start delivering this. You know, so they've obviously got time to write up kind of information and sort things out. So hopefully we can come back next year with a bit of a review, with some positive feedback from our Tomorrow's Young Women cohort and project. Hopefully with some positive feedback about the changes. So just for a little bit more information around relationships and sexual health, we've mentioned Brooke a few times. So the Brooke charity provide fantastic resources around these topics, and clinics as well, around particularly kind of STI testing and sexual health.
And pregnancy testing.
Yeah, and pregnancy testing information. So please do visit the Brooke Charity. They are at Brooke Charity on Facebook, Twitter and other social media sources, and they have a website as well, and there is a Brooke Wirral that you can visit locally or call. Through Sexual Health Week 2020, they are producing live streams and lots of resources and information, so check out their socials for that. If you are interested in Tomorrow's Young Women, whether that be as a young woman yourself, as a parent, or even as a teacher that may be listening today that think we could maybe benefit in some way coming into the school, having a chat with the pupils, you can call us Monday to Friday 9 till 4 on 015 7907. You can also contact us on our social media at Tomorrow's Women Wirral. You can email myself, Sharna, at tomorrowswomen.org.uk. I'll make a little note of that in the description box as well. Any questions around the project, if you'd like to refer or you just want any more details, please get in touch. So thank you so much, Lauren, for joining me for TWW Talks today.
Thank you for having me.
I hope to have you back, and I hope everybody enjoys Sexual Health Week 2020. Get all the resources that you can. Mostly they're free and they're on socials, and hopefully we can start having a conversation about sex, periods, gender identity, sexuality and relationships a little bit more freely with young people.
Yeah, massive.
Enjoy your day.
Bye.